You live.
Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. It is 9:18 a.m. The session is set to go until 12:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Mincer in the boardroom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards joining us via Zoom, and will be in the boardroom shortly. We also have interim county manager Robin Campbell, as well as assistant county manager Rob Gelder. And we're starting this session off with a closed session. And the closed session is per RCW 42.30.140 subsection 4A, collective bargaining sessions, or B, that portion of a meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken by the governing body during the course of any collective bargaining contracts. And this session will take approximately 15 minutes, and commissioners' action may follow. We are back from executive session or closed session. We were in closed session for RCW 42.30.140, subsection 4A, collective bargaining sessions, or B, that portion of a meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken by the governing body during the course of any collective bargaining contracts. No commissioner's action follows that closed session. Next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners, BoCC draft agenda for our meeting of November 7th, 2023. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Then is the approval of the Tuesday, November 7th, 2023 agenda. We have two presentations today. The first one from Public Works is the Thurston County Public Works American Public Works Association re-accreditation.
So Commissioners, this item actually will not be Public Works making the presentation to the board, but actually one of the APWA state directors will be coming, Tina Nelson, to actually do that presentation on behalf of APWA to the county.
In person?
In person.
Oh, that's pretty exciting. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and then next from Public Health and Social Services is Veterans Day proclamation.
Yes, we've reached out to Mark Moffett, who has, he and Jose Vargas to send a notice out to county employees, inviting them to attend. We don't know how many might show up, either in person or on Zoom.
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, next is an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
No updates at this time.
Okay, questions? Okay, moving on, consent items A through E. Item 3A from the auditor's office is the approval of the voucher list for the week of October 16th.
So this first item is your regular approval of the payments made on behalf of the county during the week of October 16th. I am not aware of at this time of any payments made for tenant improvements at the atrium. So it is on the consent agenda.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
Okay. Then item 3B from the treasurer's office is authorize the sale of tax title property via private negotiation to Dale J. Lager.
So we received this map from Treasurer Gatman last week. And I will turn it over to you, Jeff, to speak about this property.
Yeah, thank you. So this property is near the intersection of Little Rock Road and 93rd Avenue. It does not have direct road access. Salmon Creek runs through the middle of it. It's considered 100% wetland. The prospective buyer is wanting to buy this property to preserve it from preserve it for being natural and to put it back on the tax rolls. Those were his specific reasons. Anticipating a question about contacting adjacent property owners, I have not and I do not. And part of the reason for that is because, first of all, we're getting approached, like in this case, Mr. Luger came and approached us and said, hey, I want to buy this property. And it's a reasonable offer. And it's like, you know, if anybody approached any of us and said, hey, I want to buy your property, here's what I'm willing to pay for it, you're going to weigh the merits of the offer. You're not going to say, well, wait a minute, I got to go talk to my neighbor first. But also, that would be treating certain members of the public differently than I'm treating everybody else. And it does open us up for some criticism. You know, what if, you know, I contact an adjacent property owner and then somebody across the street says, hey, you never called me. And it also adds a lot of cost. We got to remember, these properties are not generating any income for the tax districts right now. And because they're not desirable, and how do we know they're not desirable? Well, somebody quit paying taxes on them. The reason the tax title is because we received 0 bids at auction. So anytime anybody wants to buy one of these and get them put back on the tax rolls, we're really happy. And so we try to do that by spending a minimal amount of money. And quite honestly, even the minimal amount of money that we do spend, it takes a while for that tax that we collect to catch back up to what we've spent. But it is producing for the tax districts at that point. Also need to remember that any purchase price is dispersed out amongst all of the taxing districts, not just the county. So whatever the purchase price is, we get about 10% of it. It's not like we hold it in fee like property that is titled to the county.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. I think this boils down to a fairness issue. I'm gonna ask Jeff, when was this auction offered? When was the last time this went up?
2014.
In 14? Okay, so 10 years ago. And Jeff and I did have a chance to talk about this yesterday, but here is my problem with this. I thought that we had reached an agreement where the county commissioners would not be responsible for this type of a sale of property. And I thought that was a good way to go, leave it strictly up to the treasurer. But upon further research, I guess we found out that it ultimately has to end up in front of us to give the authority to do this. And if you would take notice of this particular property, it's surrounded 100% by adjoining property owners. There is no access to the property other than through one of these other properties. And so my feeling is this is a fairness issue, not to at least post or notice to adjoining property owners that this particular property would be coming up for sale. So I happened to call one of the property owners and asked them if they knew that that property was coming up for sale. And they said, no, we've been wanting to buy that property. But they were never notified that it was coming up for sale. So how do we rectify this particular problem? What was the price that you got offered on there,
I
Jeff?
think this one was 7,500.
7,500?
Yeah, and these properties are advertised on our website, the entire list.
I'm not alleging anything improper. I think Jeff's doing a great job on getting these properties back to the public and on the tax rolls. I don't know that there's any nefarious activity on anybody that's buying this property whatsoever, but I do know the adjoining property owners are very interested. Now, would they pay more or less? I don't know. But if we don't notify them and merely having a information posted, and I don't know how it's posted, but I believe we are obligated to notify adjoining property owners, especially in a case like this where there is no other ability for people to access this property except through one of these property owners. And whether or not it can be utilized for anything, Jeff, I think before mentioned that this was not in a buildable area or buildable lot, maybe because of environmental issues, I don't know. But it certainly could be used as pasture or something. Don't know the answer to that, and I guess we won't know. And I thought we had this solved, but come to find out, this is gonna continue to come in front of us. And I think we need to look at how we're disposing of these properties. So that's my objection to it. I can't sign off on a property being disposed in this manner because I don't think it's fair to the adjoining property owners. So that's kind of where I'm at on this situation. I'd like to see something done that we can do it in a fair manner I don't think we have to notify everybody else, but I do think we're obligated to notify adjoining property owners. This is the second time that this has happened, this year, anyway, that I'm aware of.
Have the adjoining property owners contacted the treasurer's office?
No.
No, nobody's gotten hold of but when you say contacted, what do they call them, January first
Well,
every year?
You said you contacted and they said that there was interest.
Yeah.
And so did they, after that,
I only talked to one property owner, just to see if there was any notification at all. I didn't go down there, I didn't talk to anybody about it. I just think the fair thing to do. Now, in the one that recently went through, one of those adjoining property owners had contacted the county, and it was through the county's property disposal person. And that had been like 5 years earlier, and they were assured that they would be notified about that sale if it was ever put on the market. So I see Commissioner Metzger's got it.
I'm not really tracking the argument, so I guess I wanna ask Commissioner Edwards, so what is the adjoining property owner, what right do they have to a different property versus anyone else in the public? I mean, if your argument was, hey, if we notify these people, we might get a better bid for the county, like,
That's what I'm thinking.
that's one argument, but you're talking about a fairness issue. That's not a fairness issue, that's just that's a business economic issue. You're saying it's a fairness issue, like we're being unfair to the adjoining property owners. I'm not tracking that piece of your argument.
Well, in this case, I've not talked to the other property owners, and I don't know if they had talked to somebody at the county level that was in charge of property in the past or not. I can only refer to the one several months ago that we dealt with, and that, by the way, is now going up for auction, is the way I understand it. And apparently that costs the county more to do an auction than it does an individual. This almost looks like gifting of public funds without the three bids, if you will. I mean, it just looks similar to that. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying we need to come up with a solution to at least notify, and especially on one like this, what kind of a property, what kind of a problem are we gonna create in the neighborhood by giving this to selling it to someone else, and then there's absolutely no access to it. And I think we're creating a neighborhood problem that we don't have to create. If somebody wanted to bid on this and make an agreement with one of these other individuals to give them access, that's a completely different story. But I do think we're obligated to notify, because there's no other access to this property except through the adjoining properties.
I think if we're gonna be obligated to, not to sit there, but I think if we're gonna say from now on, we want all the adjoining property owners to be notified of this, I believe the treasurer is gonna need resources for that. Like, he's doing this on a limited staff basis, and the reason they've been done this way, it's basically just because of the resources that are available, and once someone demonstrates it, the treasurer passes it through. I think if we're gonna be like, we would like all the adjoining property owners to be notified, then I'm sure the treasurer is gonna be like, well, I need resources, not to speak, on your behalf, but just, I imagine that's the issue that you're going to run into, is it's going to take.
Yeah, I mean, the taking it to auction, I know, Robin, you had your hand up, but taking it to auction is triple to quadruple the cost of doing what we're doing here with the agreement. And there's costs, the law allows me to collect known costs. But when we go to auction, because of the way that we have to notify the auction company and notify the public of the auction, there's costs involved, namely with publishing in the newspaper, that we don't know before we post the auction price. And so those costs are not recoverable.
So my only question was, when a new tax title property comes into the county's possession, what is the process? You know, if, for any that come to us in 2024, what do you do?
So the first thing is, it hasn't received any bids. So
Right,
the
right.
very first thing we do is we re-auction it, usually the following week. And the auctions are always the Monday after New Year's Day. And so then the following week, I think we put them up on Tuesday, and they're online for 2 to 3 days. If we don't get any bids that second time, the first thing we're looking at is this property, could this property be usable for the jurisdiction that it lies within? Because according to RCW, we can give them a first right of refusal. Since most of these properties, like this one, is wetland, now you mentioned maybe pasture, well, you can't use it for pasture because it's wet.
Well, I want to interject something there. What is classified as wetland by some of our long-range planning folks could be a seasonal issue where, I know Scatter Creek dries up and it's dry most of the year. And so if that's part of what is taking place, that's part of the time. And so it's not that there's no value, but there's limited usage, I guess is what I would say.
So anyway, then also when we get to tax title at that point, within that first year, we do notify the adjoining property owner. Say, hey, this came up.
Okay, so there's a process in the first year that we get it.
Yes.
That involves, it's already gone through auction, process, due to failure to pay taxes.
Right.
And then it comes to you as tax title, and we try to auction it a second time. We offer it to local jurisdictions, and we also notify adjoining property owners in that first year. And then it sits until someone says, hey, I'd kind of like to buy this.
Can I ask a
piece of land.
question on that? So when you notify the adjoining property owners in the first year, are you doing that as a practical matter because they're the ones that might want to purchase it? Or are you doing it because they have some sort of legal right or a feeling that it's only fair in some way that they have to be notified specifically and above and beyond, like the next layer of property owners that are nearby,
It's
the former?
purely pragmatic.
Okay.
There's no legal issue there. It's just trying to get the property back on the tax roll. You gotta remember, by the time it goes to auction, we've already lost out on 3 years' worth of taxes, us in the tax districts.
And Commissioner Edwards, your concern is maybe somebody in the interim then buys a property, like maybe the original guy that got notified and now somebody buys and they wouldn't know?
Well,
Because it sounds like the property owners are being notified, but I know time passes and
yeah,
owners change.
the problem is, I think the one that's coming up for auction now that we dealt with a few months ago, I believe that one was like in 1958. It was last noticed to anyone.
Okay.
And so where do you draw the line? If it was 2 years ago, okay, but most property that's a residential property, the average, there's a sale every 7 years. And so those other individuals possibly would not have known, the newer property owners would not have known. But what happened the last time around, and I've not talked to any of these other property owners, one of the property owners from the last issue that we dealt with here had contacted the county, because in the past, there has been a county person dealing with county property that was in charge of that disposal process in some fashion. Before, I guess it went to the treasurer, I guess. I don't know the answer to that, but it was over at Public Works.
It was in Public Works.
It was
Melanie Rabalia.
Yeah, it was in Public Works.
Not for tax title properties.
She was the one that had the inventory, and when somebody would inquire, she would send them to Eric.
Right.
There was a process. I don't know
There was a
exactly what it broke down.
process. Yeah.
Anyway, so on that particular process, that property owner had said, well, when's this coming up for sale? Well, we don't know, maybe the treasurer's office, maybe before Jeff was in treasurer, I don't know.
Oh, way
because
before.
I have to commend Jeff for trying to get this done right. But in that case, that adjoining property owner was told, well, we'll let you know when it comes up. But they never did let that property owner
But
know.
why didn't they just negotiate with them then? Cause we didn't have this process.
We didn't have this process in place.
But currently, that wouldn't be how it works, like, because they wouldn't, A, they wouldn't be told, well, we'll notify you in the future when it comes up. B, they'd be sent right to a negotiation with the treasurer's office. So we
Well-
fixed that problem.
That, yeah, but wasn't fixed, that it was carried through with. So that person, I don't know if they're gonna bid on it or buy it or what, I don't know the answer to that, cause those are yet pending. Didn't you say
They're gonna
what's
be
that's
prejudiced
coming
by
up?
the legacy system, basically.
Now, I just hate to see something this looks like there's something wrong with the process. And it doesn't look fair because these adjoining property owners have expressed an interest, but they were never notified. All I'm saying is, how simple could it be to mail out to these 4 addresses and say, the property next to you that the county owns is gonna come up for sale.
But it
If
could
you're
be-
interested, contact the
But it
treasurer.
could be the guy 2 doors down that called the county and said, let me know when that's coming up for sale. I mean, you're
Could.
just drawing kind of an arbitrary line to go with the people
Well,
that
I'm
are
trying to make
nearby.
it as simple as possible, and in this case, it's kind of unique because there's no access to it. Legally, they can't even walk over and look at it, let alone do anything else. I guess they could fly a helicopter over there and land on it. But it's kind of a bugaboo. It needs to be done right. This isn't right. That's what I'm
Okay,
contending.
So I'm going to interject that it would seem very random that if Jeff gets a call from some citizen who says, hey, kinda am interested in this property over here, that would trigger, oh, somebody wants it, so we better check to see if anybody else wants it too. I think that if we could come up with a way for the county to do more an awareness campaign, if you will, that these properties are out there. If anyone is interested, you are welcome to contact the treasurer, get some notice out there going. But to do them whenever someone raises their hand seems extremely random and burdensome.
Cause Jeff has brought up the point that it seems unfair to that person that's bidding. It's like,
Right.
nobody's interested and I come forward and now the county's rustling up a counter bidder against them, that makes that person feel like the process is.
Okay,
And that's remember when I'm sitting here in front of you, talking about this for consent agenda, we've already got an agreement in place with the prospective buyer.
yeah, I'm not sure that in itself appears fair, because we have the gifting of public funds. When we give something of value to someone else and there isn't a bid on it. Now, we usually require going to the county auditor. Who's the one that, when we only get one bid on a project?
Our internal
Internal
auditor
Reviews.
assesses, for contracting purposes, we do check with Brandon to see if it meets sole source
Right.
requirements, which are very clear in the law, but this is not that,
No, I'm not saying
not
it
at
is.
all.
I'm saying it's similar to that, where we end up in a situation where we're giving someone, now, the assessor's got value on the property of $45,000. How that got there, Jeff and I had a little discussion about this the other day. How does that happen? Well, there's really no rhyme to reason to that.
Sounds too high, right?
Pardon?
Too high, right?
Well, we're being offered $7,500 for a $45,000 property that the assessor says is worth $45,000. Now, could you take that to the Board of Equalization and get an adjustment? I suppose that's another issue.
Yeah, but no. These properties are held by the county in trust. Our duty is to recover the tax money owed to the taxing jurisdictions that it lies in. And I believe that there's a law that says that if we collect more than we're owed, that has to be returned to a prior owner. Anything in excess, that's recent.
Not
Um,
in the case of tax title.
Not for tax title.
It's the money is distributed, once we satisfy the back taxes and the collection costs, the surplus is distributed out to the tax districts, according to the current distribution.
I think that may have recently changed, so we should check
I
on
don't know
that.
when that changed.
But it's our duty is to hold it until we can get it back on the tax rolls.
Right, now, the surplus funds, so like, when we have the auction in January, if somebody is a successful bidder on a property, then the excess funds beyond the taxes and collection fees
Go to the
do
prior
go back to
owner.
the prior owner.
Right.
I do think that, based on what Jeff said, that recover the collection costs would negate any taxpayer contribution to Jeff's office about covering such a minimal thing as a mailing before a property is sold. So nobody can say, well, we didn't know anything about it, and you're giving this property that the assessor says is worth $45,000 to this individual, and now he's bugging me about, he says he can cross my property to get to it, or whatever it is. It just doesn't seem like a
Okay.
So
fair
then,
process to do business this way.
yeah, so then Commissioner Edwards, just to kind of try to pinpoint, is your request to notify all of the property owners for this, or can we move forward with this and then set a process in the future, right? We can work with the treasurer's office to see what he would need for, you know, if it's to send mailings to the adjoining property owners, and maybe discuss like what that process would look like, so therefore we have something. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just struggling to see like how we're going to do this now, since we're kind of like, I feel like we're too far in advance, but if it's something where we can discuss a process and in the future and be like, okay, well, is it a sign that's posted in the property, like it's going to, these are the resources that the treasurer is gonna need for something like that? Or what is that process going to look like, or that policy going to look like? So we can work together in the future on notifying the adjoining property owners or whoever passes through the property that's
We need
interesting.
to figure out a process.
I think,
And can I just answer the chair's question? I guess you were directing that to me. So I really think what we should do is, and we can do it right here, we can do it today. The democratic process is what ends up ruling. So if I have to vote against this, so I'm gonna ask that it be put on the agendas instead of consent item. And if my seatmates feel this is okay, they can vote for it, and I'm gonna vote against it. So I did, and I called Jeff as a courtesy that I was gonna discuss this today so that he could be prepared, because I got nothing against Jeff doing what he's doing. I think the process is flawed. I'm trying to be as fair as I possibly can to my constituents, although they're in Commissioner Mentzer's district, I guess, but
what, how many tax title properties do we have? Do we have a list?
170 or 80.
Roughly 200, a little under 200.
I mean, it seems like you could solve this whole problem in one fell swoop by just going just doing a mailing to every, 4 properties for each 200, it's 800 postcards. I mean, it would take a little bit of time, but you'd be resetting the notice that was done in the fifties
what I
on some
think
property.
that's
And then it's
what I think
done, and then
would
you're
solve the
not,
problem.
what I don't like is doing this one by one, where we've got a bidder and now, we're gonna go rustle up the neighbors around that. I don't feel good. I feel equally uncomfortable with that as you feel with the other. I think they're both flawed. The only way to fix it would be to reset the notice
Either
under the new
reset the
process that we
notice
have.
or put them out to auction.
So the one, if this property were private, yeah, there is no obligation to notify the owners you're gonna sell it.
Pardon?
There's no obligation to adjacent owners that you're gonna sell it. You'd sell it
If somebody owns
as
it.
a new owner.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is, I've been doing a lot of field work when I was at the assessor's office. I've never met a property owner that didn't know who owned the property next door. Never.
Oh, I think these people knew who owned the property. They said
Sure.
the county owned the property,
Sure.
but they didn't know they had the ability to even get involved in buying it. Like the other owner, the other property, the person had actually called 5 years earlier and said, I want to be able to bid on this. Well, they were never notified that there was any possibility to even put in a bid. So is that legal? And the difference between the government doing it versus a private citizen doing it, there's a lot of shyster private citizens. I don't want there any indication that there's a shyster government activity. And that's what, this actually looks a little shady. And that's where I come to the fairness issue.
And I think if a property owner had contacted Melanie, she would not say the property's not for sale. She would direct them to Eric because she did that.
I don't know. I don't know those issues, but I do think Commissioner Mentzer's got a solution
Yeah.
that we could fix
Yes.
this.
And
But
so-
in this case, I'm obligated to vote against it.
Yeah.
I've told the property owner that I did talk to. I said, I don't know how this is gonna go. I don't know how my seatmates feel about it. I think it's a bum deal, the way it was handled, and I'm gonna bring it up as an issue. So they're probably watching our meeting today. That's fine. That's the way the
And if
process goes.
they are watching, I encourage them to get in touch with the treasurer's office and talk to them kind of
Well,
about this, right?
in this case, it might be too late if we authorize the sale. That's why I can't vote for this sale.
So
That's,
at this point, according to PA opinion, since I've got an agreement in place, I can't entertain any other offers.
Okay.
I disagree with that. I think that you can, just like, this is the same scenario we dealt with a few months ago. Same, the treasurer gave us that same answer, but come to find out, yes, he was able to, yes, it's going up for auction. And the board chose not to vote to sell that at that particular point in time. So I just think it's strictly fairness. I'm not buying into the fact that you can't do it. I think we need some more legal advice on this. Here's a good example of why don't we have legal counsel at our meetings? Don't see anybody there. I didn't call legal counsel, but I don't know as I should. So anyway, I think it ought to be delayed, but it's up to my seatmates to decide that.
If it were to be delayed, let's just say just entertain my curiosity. If it were to be delayed till the 21st, let's just say, okay, we'll bump it to the 21st. But if there's already an agreement in place, you still can't hear any other offers then. So then, unless we decided that, no, we're not going, like,
I'm not remembering the case that you're talking about. You said there's one from a couple of months ago that we pulled off.
Yeah.
And how is that different than this?
delayed,
I don't even remember that.
Well, Jeff
It's
pulled
going to
that
auction.
and put it up for
There's
auction.
one of them in Rochester, yeah.
It's down in that same area,
And why was that done?
because we would not move it forward to a sale. I asked that it be removed from the consent. At that time, my seatmate said, well, let's see what the deal is. I was given the assignment by my seatmates to get a hold of
That was-
adjoining property owners, see what the deal is, which I did, and I don't wanna do that for 200 more properties. I would much rather that we would put some policy in place so that at least we could tell property owners, hey, we notify folks when this comes up. Right now, that isn't the case. That's all I'm asking for.
so,
This property aside, I could certainly make an assignment to someone in Central Services who manages tax title properties, other than the sale, but I could make an assignment in central services to send out notices on all 200 properties to adjoining property owners that these are available for sale. And we can, we can do a education campaign of some type to just put out to the community that if you're interested, the county has many very small pieces of property that are available for sale, and contact the treasurer. And we can send out regular, we can post it on Facebook, we can put a short blurb in a newsletter, whatever. But we can get notice out on what's there now. I think you've got a decision to make on the one in front of you, but for future, we can.
I'm good with
get
that, but I'm
something
still
going.
confused. So in the one that from a few, whenever it was, you didn't have an agreement made with the property owner at that time?
We had an agreement because there apparently was interest expressed by a neighbor. I decided to take it to auction, which we do whenever there's multiple people asking about a property. But talking to Rick Peters, I should not have done that.
Okay.
If only the Board of County Commissioners, though, can authorize the sale of property, then I do believe we need legal counsel on whether or not an agreement that you enter into is binding.
Right, cause then like, what's our decision point? Is it over?
Right,
Or just some kind of formality of
right.
law?
But by state law, only the Board of County Commissioners can authorize the disposal of county-owned
So there has to be a
property.
contingency built in, if what you're saying, an implied contingency that the board approves.
That's where I'm saying that I would seek legal advice from our.
Well, and that's
attorneys.
where you're at now. I mean, you're approving or disapproving this agreement.
Right.
If you disapprove the agreement, it's done.
When you say it's done, what do you mean by that?
We just go back to
The
like it
deal's
never happened.
over. And then we can start the new process that Robin has laid out. And then if that person wants it, he can be involved in it. But I just think this is an unfair benefit to, it's almost like taking a bid without having adequate bidders and without having the auditor review that that's okay. So, if we were to delay it, why would you wanna do something this technical and bring it up again next week? I mean, if it's gonna be this technical, I think it's an injustice to our legal counsel to say, hey, you got a week to figure this one out. And I think it's an injustice to Jeff to put him in that position. I think, what's the hurry? Is there a hurry? That'd be my question to the.
Well, I mean, we've got a property owner. I don't remember what date he first contacted us. It's on the application. So he's been waiting for resolution to this.
Well,
And you gotta remember, if a property does go to auction, that's opened up nationwide. So
Good.
there is absolutely no guarantee that the neighboring property owner that wants it is gonna get it.
and I don't care that the neighboring property owner gets it or not. I'm only interested in the fairness and that the county get the maximum tax dollar relief and can recover for the back taxes, for the cost of doing this. And it sounds like that is all recoverable. So I'm just looking for the best deal. I'm not advocating, I don't know these folks down here. I just am looking for the best fair position to be taken by the county. So,
And remember too, I mean, if, you guys wanna send out the letters, that's great. But if the volume of these increases substantially, I don't have resources in my office to completely deal with them.
well, you can blackmail us if you want.
I'm not-
and that's
that is
fine.
not
I mean, I
blackmail.
don't care. It's just, I'm gonna stick to my guns about the fairness of the whole process and recover what we can for the taxpayer. And I have no way of knowing anything about the assessed evaluation, why the difference. I don't know. I haven't, it's 7 acres of property, which is somewhat unusual. You know, we usually deal with a sliver here and there and a right of way that's been abandoned and those type of things. But in this case, I think there's potential here.
So perhaps then just a clean path would be to remove it from the consent agenda, have it as a department item, have the board potentially vote it down if that is the will of the board. That then provides Jeff with clear communication to the person who made the offer and the bid, that basically that bid is no longer valid.
Okay.
And then moving forward with a process like Robin mentioned in terms of doing a proactive adjoining property notification through central services and
Not just for this property, I'm
Right.
proposing that
looking at
for
the suite of
all
them.
the properties that we have on the books.
Good.
Kind of resetting the, hello, we've got these properties sitting. Cause some of them we've had for decades,
I think the oldest one is 1918.
yeah.
And I know
So-
that we,
And there's one in the bottom of the lake that probably no one will ever buy.
Well, and one of the oldest ones, I think it's from 1928, is a private road that serves 4 properties.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of odd little pieces of property.
So if one is at the bottom of the lake, does that, Mr. I was like,
Yeah,
I was like,
maybe
you can't put
Mr.
pesticides
Halverson
on
would be
mine.
interested, I don't know. But we'll find a way to advertise that we've got these things. But you need to decide what you're going to do with the one before you today.
Okay, so then we'll move it to department items and then that time the board will decide whether we move forward with this or not. And then we'll proceed with the process of notification and maybe doing, so that way the treasurer's office doesn't get like completely overwhelmed, but maybe doing it as a phased-in approach, maybe starting with the ones from 1918, the ones that have been there for a long time and notifying, and then moving it on to the newer ones and
Sure, we can do it, we can phase it somehow. And
just so
Figure it
at
out.
least it doesn't, the treasurer's office isn't overwhelmed with all the
Robin
calls.
said the central services would do
I
it.
Yeah.
will assign it to central
So
services.
treasurer don't have to do anything.
Well, yeah, but then the calls will start coming in, I imagine.
And we
Asking
hope that,
questions.
That's what we want.
yes.
We do want that, but we also
do
don't
want
want, but we also don't want the treasurer's office to.
Well, just understand, depending on how much response we get, it's gonna take a while to get through it.
Yep.
That's it. But, and I do want to address the gift of public funds comments, because this is not a gift of public funds. As soon as that first year passes after it becomes tax title, the minimum amount that we can accept is the back taxes owed.
Is the what?
The
Back
back taxes
taxes.
owed.
Oh,
So that doesn't even include the collection costs. Because the law is written in a way to incentivize getting it back on the tax rolls as quickly as possible.
let me ask about the back taxes. I thought we were done with this, but with the back taxes owed and the county's able to recover that, so every year that the taxes are not paid, does that become accumulative?
Nope,
Or just the first year?
just the first year. So like that one from
Okay.
1958
Yeah.
in Rochester, I don't remember what the initial tax was on that. It was like $78.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we need to figure out a way to get this solved so we don't have this problem. I really thought we had this solved about a month ago when Jeff and I met to try and get this figured out, but legal got in the middle of that one and said, no, you can't do it that way. You have to do it this other way. It's shy of changing things. Well,
Responsibility
now
of the
here we
board.
are talking about the possibility of changing things to treat the public fairly. And as far as the gifting of public funds, I don't know how that works when something is assessed at 45,000 and is sold for 7,500.
Well, like I explained to you yesterday, assessor's office is not actually valuing these, because they're not required, the legislature I don't know what it was, 10 years ago or so, maybe 12, recognized that assessor's offices were challenged for adequate resources for all of the properties in the county. And so they actually wrote the law that says the assessor's office is not required to put a market value on exempt properties.
Okay, I mean, but I still don't know how it says 45,000 on it versus
It's just in their computer formula.
it's a.
No, in their computer formula in the assessor's office. Nobody's actually looking at it.
Well, however it happens, I don't know. I don't know how it happens, but it sure looks funny when we're selling a $45,000 property for $7,500. It just doesn't look good. So I guess we'll have a vote on it this afternoon, please.
All right,
Okay, so,
We'll see where we go from there.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving this to department
Yeah,
item.
Okay, ma'am, could I say one other thing?
Okay, go
Because this looks like Jeff and I are being scratchy about this. I want to commend Jeff for the good job he's doing, making every effort to get the county out of owning these 200 properties that we asked him to do some time back. And here we are in a bugaboo. So I just want Jeff to get adequate recognition and compliment that he is doing a yeoman's job, and it's kind of thankless, isn't it? Anyway, so please keep up the good work, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3D, Public Health and Social Services, 2023 through 2025, Agreement with Dispute Resolution Center of Thurston County for Criminal Justice Treatment Account Funds.
yes, Commissioner, this item is in accordance with the Criminal Justice Treatment Account, also called the CJTA, plan that the board approved. This is specifically for the continuation of restorative justice facilitated dialogues that is performed by the Dispute Resolution Center of Thurston County. So Shaylin is on the call if you have any questions about this item.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. I've asked enough questions today.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
So I think I asked last week, but just to remind myself, I was asking what, a lot of recipients of these funds and why are we doing this? And I think the answer was a lot of the recipients are internal, but if it's an external recipient, we have to approve the specific
Right.
agreement.
This is a contract that is beyond the current fiscal year, so it requires board approval. And you will see, this one's on consent agenda because the dollar amount's quite low. In the department items, I believe under public health, is another contract, also in accordance with the CJTA plan,
7A.
with the Thurston Mason BHASO. So item 7A is also connected to that plan. That's a department item because it is a large dollar amount, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to item 3D, Human Resources, approve the Shaylin, sorry, did you have anything to add to this item?
Nothing else, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, 3D, Human Resources, approve the collective bargaining agreement between Thurston County and the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association Administrative Support Staff.
Yes, you just heard the details of this plan in a closed session at 9:15 this morning. We can't talk about the details of the plan in an open session until after the board votes on this contract.
And item 3E is connected to that.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No, ma'am.
3D or 3E? Okay, so then we'll move on to department items, starting with Commissioner's Office. Item 4A, a resolution to join the Justice Counts Initiative.
This item is coming forward, and Leah is here to talk a little more about what it is.
Yes, thank you. We talked about this briefly last week, but this is a resolution to join the Justice Counts Initiative, which is a nationwide initiative through the National Department of Justice Bureau Assistance. I'm sorry, they're
Bureau of what?
Bureau of Justice Assistance. I was trying to think of all the acronyms, and I haven't had a lot of coffee yet. So they also partner with 22 other nationwide federal groups to support this endeavor. As one of the first members of the initiative, we would get access to free technical assistance through the initiative to help grow our data practices here at Thurston County. So as you all know, our law and justice data is quite siloed. One of our goals is to create a data warehouse here at Thurston County, and this is the first step towards taking that. So this would be, again, free technical assistance. Their technical assistance team would come in and help us with developing the data governance plan and structure with all of our law and justice stakeholders and their departments and offices, which we would then use to create a data warehouse for the purposes of analyzing our data. We've done a lot of talk about strategic planning and, what's our recidivism, what programs work, which ones don't. This would give us the opportunity to really start diving into that data and have the opportunity to start looking at that and answering those questions. Again, this is no additional cost to the taxpayers. It is free technical assistance from BJA. So we would appreciate your support. All of our law and justice stakeholders have already heard the presentation and have agreed that they would like to move forward with it, and we do have approval from the ITC subcommittee as well.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, you said we'll have benefits that we will receive as one of the first members of this organization. So I take it it's gonna spread nationwide eventually to where others are gonna be able to partake of it. But we might get in on the ground floor of something and maybe get a little bigger benefit because we're jumping in first.
Yes, a little bit more about that benefit. So they were looking for, I believe, 8 founding members. Originally, they were looking at statewide, but we were able to kind of get in and have conversations while there were still open spots, and they were very excited about the opportunity to work with us. Being one of the founding members would give us access to our own technical assistance team. So they anticipate that as the endeavor grows and more states and jurisdictions join, that they will have less dedicated teams and work will be spread out among their initiative team. But as one of those first founding members, we would have our own dedicated technical assistance team to support that. I can say that there are some people up at the legislature that have expressed an interest and are currently in talks with Justice Counts. So personally, I think it's pretty exciting that we are jumping on this before Washington State itself and the legislature gets on board. I think it's a really unique opportunity for us to showcase what we have and really start to move law and justice forward in Thurston County.
And I guess I'd like to follow up with that the reason we're getting in is because of Leah's hard work towards kind of shepherding this issue, I guess is the best way to put it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
I don't have any questions. I could comment is just that one of the things that is important is that if we can be part of the groundswell of spreading this, like what the power of this will come when when it really does spread across the nation, then you can, and then all the data categories will be standardized and so then you can really start to see how you stack up against all sorts of different jurisdictions that might be doing other innovative programs, and you can see what's working, and you can actually compare apples to apples. That's the goal here, is to try to take, it's a big enough lift in Thurston County, but then if you're able to accomplish that and then broaden that out, then you have real powerful analytic tool.
And that's a wonderful point, Commissioner, because, with Justice Counts, they've done a lot of background research with their partners to determine these over 30 metrics that are considered evidence-based that we should be collecting at all points of the justice system, right? And so that is something that's consistent in all of the Justice Counts jurisdictions, is that you should be collecting these. And as we collect those and start to upload those, and if we choose to use their dashboard tool, say Washington State were to join the initiative and get onto it as well, that gives us a very unique opportunity to compare our metrics apples to apples to the state as a whole. So I think that is a wonderful point. And it, again, it's a unique opportunity to really move our system forward.
Thank you. Leah, do we know who the rest of the founding members are that we're gonna be joining?
I would be happy to get a list from Justice Counts. I know there's several over on the East Coast, so I can get a full list and get that shared out to each of you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to echo Commissioner Edwards' words towards you. You've done such a great job in bringing these innovative programs to Thurston County and kind of helping us really move ahead when it comes to our criminal justice system and trying to collect that data. So just thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Do you remember what meeting it was where we got the presentation?
Jail Resource Team.
Sure, and you remember the date of that?
I believe it was September 1st.
I only asked because I might have the answer to Commissioner Mejia's question, because I know they talked about the other jurisdictions
Yeah, I don't remember. I was there at that presentation and then
There was a lot of information.
just-
dashboard. 23 jurisdictions using it so far. Dashboard was launched in March of 2023. I guess I didn't write down the actual
jurisdictions.
jurisdictions, who they were. It was, yeah, but it was a smattering of like Michigan and South Carolina. I mean, it's like all over the place, kind of.
Yeah,
But anyway.
Mississippi. I'd be happy to generate a list and send it to each of you.
I was just curious more than anything. I was like, I don't remember exactly where they talked about it, and so, thank you.
Yes, of course.
Okay, item 4B is publicly available electric vehicle charging stations policy.
Yes, this is the policy that you have reviewed. And if you have any remaining questions, I will say, just right off the bat, this is the policy that sets the framework and the procedures will be developed that will have very specific information about how we manage the EV charging stations. So,
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards? Oh, Rebecca, anything you'd like to add? Sorry, before.
Nothing to add at this point. No, thank you.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Edwards? Go ahead.
I had a couple of questions about this, but possibly Robin has covered that by saying we'll address maybe anything as far as, like, one of the things, we didn't really clarify the whole enforcement thing, how that was gonna happen, and we might take care of that through some kind of a policy
so
procedure.
we will absolutely be outlined in the procedure. The most likely thing is that these are going to be programmable smart stations. So if someone remains plugged in for too long, they will begin getting charged for any time over what the county allows.
And as we move forward with this, we're going to be, developing a contract with a provider to provide the charging service, the bookkeeping,
All of
all
that,
of the above. And that doesn't need to be in our resolution because we're gonna develop that
that's
in
correct.
policy at a
And-
later date.
Procedures, and that will go out to bid. And, you know, in accordance with whatever grant funding we manage to obtain that will support these.
I think that answers any of my concerns as to how we're gonna implement this as time goes on in a fair manner. So I have no other questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Moving to item 4C is to set public hearings. Item 4C and D is to set public hearings for 2024 through 2025, a biennium budget. And item D is to set a public hearing on revenue sources for the 2024
through 2025 biennium budget.
Thank you, Commissioners. Both items C and D are legally required actions as the board considers the budget for the ensuing years. Item C is specifically on the budget. These hearings will occur on, beginning on the first Monday in December, and continuing to the following Tuesday. And the times are grouped by topic. So for example, one block of time is for law and justice. One block of time is economic vitality. And the specific topics will be noticed in the legal notice and on our website. Item D is regarding revenue. The law requires that you hold a public hearing on all revenue required to support the budget that you are taking under consideration, including specifically information on the property tax levy. So we have these public hearings every year, and these are nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No.
Okay. Next is Community Planning and Economic Development. Item 5A is interlocal agreement amendment for voluntary stewardship program.
Right. So, and I am going to ask Ashley to describe what this item is.
Thank you. This is an amendment to the interlocal agreement with the Thurston Conservation District. They are our technical service provider on the voluntary stewardship program. And we were successful in getting funding for 6 cost share projects in the county. And since those are pass-through funds, we need to update the agreement to account for those additional monies being passed through from the State Conservation Commission to the Conservation District.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
For the public, could you just give us an example of a cost-sharing project that we're going to cover
Yep, those are
to
best.
solve an environmental issue maybe or something?
Yeah, so those would be like manure storage facilities, exclusionary fencing, or heavy use areas.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No.
Okay, no questions from me.
Thank you.
Item 6A is Public Defense, approval of contract with the Washington State Office of Civil Legal Aid.
This item is a award of funding from the state of Washington to support staff in our Office of Public Defense, to represent people who have been convicted of crimes and these are financial obligations that can be, I'm gonna say the word forgiven, by the courts. And Patrick is here to tell you more about this.
Good morning, Commissioners. Patrick O'Connor, Public Defense. Yes, this is an opportunity for us. We applied for a state grant through Office of Civil Legal Aid in a community reinvestment grant that they distributed to qualified applicants. We were selected as a qualified applicant. So what this gives us the opportunity to do is employ one staff attorney and one paralegal through right now through 2025, June 2025. And this work is specific to provide indigent individuals legal financial obligation relief, which they're entitled to under the law. And so this is supports our mission and is consistent with the strategic plan of the county to continue to improve justice outcomes for those involved. We wouldn't have the capacity to do this otherwise, so I saw it as a great opportunity to continue to help those individuals leave behind legal financial obligation that they're entitled to relief on, so they can move on with their lives and hopefully contribute to our community. Happy to answer any other questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No.
Okay, no questions for me. Thank you. Item 7A, Public Health and Social Service, 2023 through 2025, interlocal agreement with Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization for Criminal Justice Treatment Account Funds.
So as mentioned earlier, this also is in accordance with your CJTA plan. And this item awards $182,000 to the Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization to provide housing and case management services to our citizens with behavioral health issues. And Shaylin can answer any questions that you may have about this contract.
Thank you. Shaylin, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing else. That was a great summary from Robin. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No.
Okay, no questions for me. Moving on to Public Works, item 8A is resolution and call for sealed bids for Johnson Point Road and Hawks Prairie Road intersection improvement project, CP number 61364.
So this is a call for bids for the project as stated by Commissioner Mejia, and I'm going to turn it over to Brian to just say a bit about this project.
Good morning, Commissioners. So yeah, this project's Johnson Point Hawks Prairie, the intersection right by the bay there. This is a proposed single lane roundabout. It's funded by a Surface Transportation Federal Fund for $2.7 million. Total project cost is estimated to be $3 million, with the remaining funds coming from the transportation or traffic improvement or impact fees. With this project, we'll be doing some shoulder work, some street lights, and it's a improvement to fix the mobility and safety at this intersection. So.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? Okay, no questions for me. Thank you. Item 8B, resolution and call for sealed bids for the Pacific Avenue Pavement Preservation Project.
Again, I'm gonna ask Brian to just say a little about the project.
And then can we cover 8C, because it's also
Yep.
about pavement, and that's resolution and call for sealed bids for the Yelm Highway Southeast Pavement Preservation Project. So go ahead, Brian.
Yep, thank you. So this one, Pacific Avenue, is a preservation project from Carpenter Road, so Lacey City limits to Union Mills. We will be grinding the top 2 to 3 inches of asphalt and replacing with new asphalt. Along with those improvements, we'll be doing some ADA improvements, American Disability Act improvements, with over some driveways and some ramps along that corridor. This project cost is around $2.5 million. It's 100% federal funded. And then the Yelm Highway project is from Rich Road to Lacey City limits also. It's $2.7 million, and it's also 100% funded. And like Pacific, this one's going to be grinding the top couple inches of asphalt and replacing, and we'll be doing some ADA improvements with this.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, but I would like to compliment Brian for, I don't know, ramrodding these, coming up with solutions to our road needs. Where we never have adequate funding within our own resources to solve these issues. And I just want to thank you for coming up with these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a team effort here in Public Works.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? Okay, no questions for me. Item 8D is request for proposal for a collection, transportation, recycling, and/or disposal of used oil, antifreeze, and oil filter services contract.
Yes, so this item is a request for proposals for a vendor who will collect these items from our waste sites across the county, including Hazo House. And I see Gerald is here, who can answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, anything you'd like to add, Gerald? You're on mute.
No, I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson? Okay, no questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we do have two public hearings. We have our standing items that we'll go through, and then we have two public hearings starting at 3:30. If we're not through with our agenda at 3:30, we will be moving on to the public hearings and then going back and finishing it off. Our first one from Community Planning and Economic Development is Lacey Joint Plan.
Yes, and you've had many work sessions on the joint plan. With Lacey, we do anticipate that we will have citizens show up to speak to this plan. We've heard
Yes,
there's interest in it, and I'm gonna let Leah say a little more.
good morning, Commissioners. We are getting a lot of comments on one specific land use and rezone amendment at the old gravel mine, 9520 Stellicum Road. I've received several comments, expect more before noon, and I do expect some people to show up to comment on that. There are other, along with the Lacey Joint Plan itself, there are other amendments included, which is the UGA boundary expansion, the low-density zoning consolidation, and then a total of 3 site-specific land use and rezoning amendments.
So this item is one of many in the comp plan changes that you'll adopt all at once, right? So the only motion is to close the public hearing this afternoon. And then we have follow-up briefing already scheduled on this.
Yeah, the follow-up briefing will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. And it would be very beneficial to staff if we did get direction on all 6 of those decision points by tomorrow so that we can start preparing documents for the final action with the comp plan update on November 28th.
And we do also tomorrow at 9 a.m. have sort of a more holistic briefing about the comprehensive plan amendments as an entire package going forward.
That's correct.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, as this comes up for a vote, I guess on December 15th, is that when this will be
We're
finalized?
planning on it being on your agenda on November 28th unless there's.
And
any
that's gonna
delay.
be the total comp plan? We have to vote one time on many different items.
Yep.
And so this has got, does this have 6
Yeah, it has
segments
the
to
joint-
this one item?
Yeah, it has the joint plan itself and then the 5 added amendments that were rolled into the joint plan.
And the joint plan of those 5 other items, we have already given direction to staff, but we haven't actually voted on it yet. Is that the way it
That's
works?
correct.
Yeah, so we will want direction to prepare documents if you want them included with the joint plan update, so to move them forward.
And Leah will remind us of maybe how we particularly voted on a.
We haven't
So
done,
there is no
There hasn't
vote.
been a vote.
I haven't given
No,
any
Not a
there's
direction.
not a
not been a
vote, but-
vote.
No, there's been no direction.
Direction?
It was
No direction.
presented, we were given contrary,
The-
the planning commission said one thing, Lacey said another thing, staff saying another thing.
Right.
We're having a public hearing. I have no idea how I'm gonna vote on these.
That's
There's
right.
been no direction of the board on any of the items
That's
contained in the
the
joint.
only direction given was to move it to a public hearing.
That's
So
correct.
tomorrow at 2, hopefully, there will be board direction so that the
But
documents can be reviewed.
on other items, I guess, I think I'm referring to,
Mhm.
didn't we?
Like Grand Mound is in there, we've done
Yeah,
all of the
we've,
votes.
we've kind of
Right,
worked,
Two to one votes on
and,
certain ones.
Yelm
we've worked through that,
joint
the
plan
Yelm
is gonna
plan.
be,
Olympia.
yeah,
And without getting into some long drawn out discussion on topics, might you, or maybe Leah, I don't know who it'd be, kind of remind us, well, on this,
so.
it's all
so
gonna be wrote up
Tomorrow
morning.
at 9, there's
We'll be
gonna
going
be a
over that.
review of everything in the comprehensive plan that you'll be asked to approve in, later this month.
And then at 2, it'll be focused on the Lacey joint plan. And I'll be reminding you of the planning commission's recommendations, the city's recommendations, and then asking for directions from you. And we'll also discuss any public comment received written up to noon today and the public comment received this afternoon at the public hearing.
More to come, it sounds like, on a complicated topic.
Yes.
Can you remind me, on the Stillicum one that you're getting, public comment on now, what the planning commission vote was on that?
The planning commission voted to not move the low density request forward. They wanted to see a higher density on that parcel. It's almost 15 acres. So they are working to alleviate affordable housing issues, and that was one of the ways that they are pushing for that.
And that's contrary to the owner of the property or something?
The applicant applied originally to change it from mineral extraction to low-density residential, which at this time is 0 to 4, low density 0 to 4. And when I told him that the planning commission wanted to increase it to moderate density, he did indicate on the phone that he was agreeable to that, but didn't think that he didn't apply for that because it is surrounded by low density. So he may be here this afternoon to testify to that. I haven't received any written comments from him on that particular subject.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and so item B is public hearing on an ordinance to amend Thurston County Code, chapter 2.7.010.
Yep, and I'm gonna just ask Rob to comment on this one.
Certainly, thank you. As the board will recall, with the change of the composition of the Board of County Commissioners, it does trigger the need to, under state law, RCW, to amend our local county code to address the increased number of county commissioners and thus ultimately the balance between elected and non-elected members. So there are two motions potentially for the board's consideration today. One, to close the hearing, and two, to actually adopt the ordinance amending the Thurston County Code so that we can move forward with the implementation of the new board makeup in January.
Questions?
Yes,
Go ahead.
and I don't recall if this was discussed maybe last week when we initially went over this. Is this one of the ones that, maybe I was the one that brought it up, or one of my seatmates, I really don't know, that we thought it ought to at least say in the heading of what Thurston County Code, chapter 2.7.010 is. I mean, and it's being adjusted because of the change from 3 to 5. I mean, so if somebody doesn't have to wonder about this,
So change
you know,
the
I mean,
description.
we're gonna make note of it in our motion, but the motion isn't really part of that portion of the description. Do you
Yeah,
get what I'm talking about on that?
Sure, we can expand the description so that it's more.
Does that make sense to my seatmates, just for the public's edification? Fine. Okay,
Okay,
that was my only questions, thank you.
questions, Commissioner Mensah?
No.
Okay. So then that will conclude our agenda for our meeting of November 7th, 2023. And then our agenda for the meeting of November 14th, 2023 is canceled, and so is our Board of Health meeting scheduled.
That's right, they're both canceled for next week, because commissioners will be at the WASAC Leadership Conference in Spokane.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll be back. We wait for like 10 minutes and.
what's going on with the TPA. And then
We're good, we're
the
live?
other, yeah.
Okay, we're live. We're back from break. It is 11:21. We do have a hard stop at noon. And so we're going to go ahead and move to the extension of Public Facilities District interlocal agreement with cities. And this was on agenda setting. We had some conversation about this last week. It is on the November 21st agenda. So this is just more information for commissioners, and I'll pass it to Robin.
Thank you. So there is an item in your packet. It is the agreement that you're being asked to approve, titled Modification to Second Amendment to Amended Interlocal Agreement regarding creation of a public facilities district for regional centers. So as we talked about last week, this item is an agreement between the county and the cities of Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater in support of a public facility district that was formed in 2003 and specifically called out public facilities of the Regional Athletic Center, or the RAC in Lacey, and the Hands-On Children's Museum in Olympia. And the jurisdictions agreed to form this district, which allows us to receive a credit on the state sales tax in the amount of approximately 3/100ths of 3/100ths of a percent. The amount of money generated last year was 2.57 million. The funds were used originally to issue bonds for the construction and maintenance of both the RAC and the Hands-On Children Museum. There were laws passed last year that allow for the extension of the public facility districts. They were originally limited to 25 years, and they can now be extended for 15 years. There are very specific restrictions in the law. It can only be extended for existing districts, and in those districts, it can only be extended for existing projects. So for our district, it can only be extended for the expansion and maintenance of the RAC and the Hands-On Children Museum. It cannot be used for other purposes. And the reason, even though the district would end in 2028, the reason that the cities are asking for this extension to be enacted now is that they are going out for bonds for the expansion and maintenance of these two facilities, and they're when they issue these bonds, their funders will want to know that there's an ongoing source of revenue to be able to pay the bonds. So this would provide that. The agreement has already been signed by Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey, and the county is the last stop, if you will. It was the agreement was developed by our attorneys. Scott Cushing worked on this along with the attorneys for each of the cities. And I think that addressed everything. And if you've got any questions on this, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And then we can talk about what the current thoughts are from Tumwater on an indoor sports and aquatic center.
The dollar amount again raised by this 3/100ths.
It is, they are currently collecting, in the last year, it's a sales tax.
Yes.
So
We just
it
retain
could
it.
vary a little,
it
but
doesn't get
we
sent
get this
in, right?
credit, that's right.
Right.
Instead of going to the state, it comes to the city of Lacey, is the fiduciary agent. 2.57 million is what I was told.
And that can fluctuate just like our 0.1%.
Sure, it'll up and down a bit.
Thank you.
So that's what it's been costing to maintain these facilities over the
Pay
year.
the bonds, pay the bonds
incrementally
that were issued to.
to pay it off.
Yep. To construct the facilities.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
Well, my questions were about how this interacts with any new district.
Tumwater in the brewery
Yeah,
district.
because there was a question, could this district be expanded?
Right.
Or could there be overlapping districts of the same jurisdictional partners? Or would we be doing anything here that was gonna cause
Get in the way of that.
conflict of a future project?
So when I asked those questions, this particular district may not be expanded. It has to be used for the existing facilities. And it's the only one that we can have of its kind. So this is the only one that we can have that is this credit against the state sales tax. So we can't establish a second one where we get that credit. What the city manager from Tumwater shared yesterday is what they are hoping to get support for is a 0.2% of a sales tax that would be a new tax. They're hoping to put that on the ballot in 2026. So there will be conversations across the jurisdictions. Again, legislation was passed that would allow this tax specifically for indoor sports and aquatic centers. And what they're talking about would fit with that proposal, but it's not, that would not be a credit against the state sales tax. That would actually be a new tax on the ballot.
And would that be a new taxing district under those new legislative authorities?
So we would have to see, but most likely, what is being proposed is a countywide tax, an additional countywide tax.
Is it a countywide tax now that's going into Lacey's and the Children's Museum?
Yes, that is countywide, and again, the thought behind that at the time it was established in 2003 is that both of these facilities, the Hands-On Children Museum and the RAC, have countywide significance. And so really it was a joint effort by the 4 jurisdictions.
And it sounds like this new proposal coming up would also be all jurisdictions countywide.
That is the proposal at this time. It's in very, very early stages, so you're gonna hear a whole lot more and have more opportunities for conversations about this proposal coming out of Tumwater. It's early days on this idea, so they're really 2 very different conversations.
What would have happened to these facilities if they had to expire in 2028 and the law hadn't been changed to allow them to extend for 15 more years? What was the plan originally for the end of the Public Facilities District financing?
I did not ask what the original plan was to continue to maintain these properties. I could certainly ask that question, but my assumption is that they would, each of the jurisdictions would be looking for funding to be able to do the necessary maintenance, they would perhaps not be planning an expansion of the facilities.
And when you say expansion, both facilities are due for
They-
expansion?
They are both planning expansions.
Any dollar amount associated with those, or percentage of, we're gonna expand the rack by 10%, or?
I have not
Children's
seen
Museum
the
or-
specific plans, but I can ask if they exist and get those.
I'm not against this, but my concern initially is that it might have a detrimental effect on what Tumwater is planning on their movement. And time-wise, I understand that they would like to go out for a bond and have a funding source for that bond. So I understand that. But is it that detrimental if we were to postpone this from today, maybe to our next meeting, whenever that is?
It is not up for a vote until November 21st. It's not on your agenda this afternoon.
Okay, so we
So
can get
you've
some
got
more
a little more
information.
time, and if you've got specific questions, I'd be happy to ask them. I've already shared with the city managers that you all have questions that you would like answered, so they know we're having this conversation. As far as it being detrimental to Tumwater, Tumwater does not believe it's detrimental to their plans, and they have already signed this agreement.
Well, my follow-up to that would be, would somebody from Tumwater wanna come here and on the record, kind of give a little update of that, maybe at our 21st meeting for agenda setting even, or at our regular meeting, because they're the ones that are most likely to be affected. I don't know that they're gonna be either, but it's going to be an issue possibly in the future that we really don't know how it all fits, that's all. I don't know if that's something my seatmates wanna ask or not.
Who issues the bonds? I mean, who's in control of these funds and makes decisions to say, oh, we're gonna send out bonds right now and?
So we have a
District, yeah.
yes, a public facility district board. Now, I cannot tell you who the county representative is, but each jurisdiction appoints a person to, well, I should be able, there's a website on it.
Sometime back, we
Um,
actually did make an
That's
appointment.
right, you make an
not
appointment, they
too
meet
far
once
in
a
the
year,
distant
and
past.
this governing body has these discussions and comes to agreements.
So,
And Lacey is the fiduciary.
so how long is this expanded to?
15 years is the maximum allowed.
So then, for 15 additional years, we're kind of tying basically the knot that we can't do another public facility district because of this, and
It's my understanding, and I will double check this, but it's my understanding that if this one came to an end, we still don't have an opportunity to do a new one.
even if we put it out to the voters, I thought
Right,
with a
well,
public facility district, we could put it out to the voters and they would
We
decide.
could put it out, but we could go out to the voters for additional tax now. What we can't do is a public facilities district that has that credit from the state sales tax. We can't do that again, is my understanding.
Ever?
I'm gonna check on the ever, but my impression is, even if you let this one end, you can't start a new one.
The legislation was changed to be able to extend this, basically a rebate from the state portion of the sales tax to fund the PFDs. So all PFDs around the state that are organized under that RCW are doing the same thing to be able to extend their eligibility for the rebate. And continue to fund projects that
Well,
they've
if
already.
what Robin said is true, then that's a no-brainer for me. What I'm concerned about is if you can have one, but only one, but it could be different ones, then, and you're saying that the Rack and Hands-on Children's Museum want to expand, that has to be balanced against whatever other competing projects might be out there. that might, because this is a very special tool, you're not having to ask voters for additional tax
That's right.
money. So I would want to make sure that we're thinking that through, not, because of the original vision was what they got.
Right.
Now they want to expand. Well, that's a new idea. And there's other new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So those would need to be compared and contrasted. But if what you're saying is that's not an option for the new idea.
That's correct. It's gotta be the existing facilities that were under your original.
We could not let this one lapse and then start a new one.
That is my understanding,
And
and
that's a
I'll double
no-brainer.
check that.
We don't have the.
If that's true, if we could get absolute clarity on that,
Clarification.
then that'll make an easy decision.
Okay.
And then, and I would like to know Commissioner Mentzer's question for the 21st, if, about what was the plan if this wasn't like,
All right.
If we don't
What were they
expand,
gonna do? Yep. Yeah, my assumption is they would not be looking at expansions.
and then Commissioner Edwards, do you want someone from Tumwater?
No, I don't need to have anybody. I was thinking if they came from Tumwater, we'd be off the hook definitely, if we were jeopardizing something, but I don't know if we are.
well, yeah, if there was that kind of competing,
Yeah.
then I would be supportive of what you were saying. But if it's really, they're not really competing.
If they
'cause-
can't have it anyway,
Yeah, they can't get this, they can't apply for that
then I guess
credit.
it becomes a moot point.
We may as well go ahead and, then it's just like leaving money on the table not to expand.
And
because-
we both receive benefits from the Children's Museum.
Yeah,
of Iraq,
absolutely.
So,
Okay.
Okay.
Great. All right, I will follow up on those.
Okay, and so this is still on for our agenda on the 21st. Robin's gonna get those additional questions answered, but for now, it's
It's on there.
staying, yeah.
could I have one more comment for Robin possibly? I think because we as a board seem to be not as knowledgeable as we could be about this whole process and what's going on, what these expansions are, if it might be worth having whoever our representative is on that taxing district, who we appointed, at least come forward and let us know that, yeah, over at the RAC, we're gonna do X, not in detail so much, but so when our constituents ask us, well, what's going on over there? Or at the Children's Museum, what the plan is, we're gonna raise it up 4 feet or whatever it is. I don't know what the plan is. And I hate that when I don't know and we talk about something and then we take an action and I get asked about it. I don't know. You know, I just
We
don't
can,
like to
we
tell
can figure
people I
out
don't
who the
know.
rep is and ask
Yeah,
him
I
or her
mean,
to report.
I don't think any of us knew the rep, but
No.
at least I don't remember it being spoke to at the time. It was just a need that we reappoint.
Yep,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can't find the names on the website.
yeah,
There's nothing there.
yeah.
We reappointed in
This
the, in
is,
the,
uh,
well, I was
interestingly vague.
in here.
Since you've been here.
Yeah,
we've
since
been-
cause I voted on that, and I remember there was this whole like confusion on like, oh, like,
We didn't
there's,
even know
we
hardly
didn't
we
know
had it,
about
yeah.
this,
Right.
so
All right,
might be a good time to check in too, since
Yeah.
the reappointment and. Okay, you have your legislative agenda, and if commissioners will look this over, on their own time and then come back on the 21st and let Robin know if there needs to be any changes, and then we can give a thumbs up or thumbs down on the legislative priorities for 2024, and we can go from there.
yep,
Does that work for commissioners?
Are we gonna make recommendations, then make a decision on the 21st? We'll know if that's our agenda or not.
Yeah.
And the only reason I bring that up is something came through from Lakes that Rob's been working on about changing some verbiage and some legislation.
They're working on some
Yeah,
language
they are,
changes.
you're not,
I'm
you are, but
actively
they
working on it.
asked us to put that, to support that particular move. They asked specifically.
We can support the bill, and I appreciate Robin, Courts forwarding that email to us.
Oh, that wasn't email to all?
It was an email to all the
Commissioners?
commissioners,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
but Rob and I had not received it, so.
Oh, okay.
I really appreciate her sending that to us. I looked at that. I think that, having taken out the language, that prohibits them from, charging indirect costs to the lake management districts, that makes the bill much more palatable to the county. And we can support that without having it be one of our top priorities.
Yeah, but is there a place on there that other things we support or no?
Not really.
Oh, okay, I thought we needed to just put it on there so people would know that we are supporting it.
There will be lots and lots of bills that the board may choose to support during session that are in addition to our top priorities.
So
Okay.
once session starts, there's gonna be a whole list and
Yeah.
we're gonna give thumbs up or thumbs
Yeah,
down or
yeah.
neutral on those and,
Regular review.
and so
And
once
that'll
that
be
one
the
comes up,
time to
yeah.
address that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, but for
That's
our
that.
legislative priorities, this kind of was what we had a conversation with Deborah about.
And on the 21st, we'll find.
And then 21st, if you'll look over it, if there's something that commissioners are either not comfortable with or would like to change the language on or would like to remove, add, just
Yep, this here for
have
your
those notes
review.
ready for the 21st.
Yep, exactly.
And then as a reminder, the legislative breakfast is on December 5th. Okay, and then you said you needed to address the tourism. TPA, the tourism promotion area changes required by Washington State Department of Revenue.
Thank you. So we have been notified by the Department of Revenue that the TPA ordinance that was adopted, I want to say in like 2014, and Jenica, come on up, but a long time ago, is not legally constructed. And Thurston is not the only county. There are many counties that are affected by this review that was recently done by the Department of Revenue. So there are a few steps that we have to take. The first is I am signing a temporary agreement with the Department of Revenue so that they continue to collect the fee. And if you will recall, it's a fee on hotels and motels with over 40 beds throughout the county. It's a $2 per night fee on a room. So they will continue to collect this until December of 2024, which gives us time to remedy our ordinance. So the steps that we need to take, we've asked DOR, and Jenica is taking the lead on this. There is an interlocal jurisdiction agreement with, again, Lacey, Tumwater, and Olympia. And Yelm, yes, thank you, and Yelm. That forms the, it's a countywide fee. And we all agreed, based on receiving a petition from the affected organizations that wanted this fee. So we started to collect it. And so we have to amend the interlocal agreement between the county and the cities. And we have to amend our ordinance. And the amendment to the ordinance will be to include a group of properties that had been excluded. And that's the part that's apparently not legal. So we are working together with the cities. Elizabeth is reviewing current law to ensure that we don't need to start again with a petition. We don't think we do. But we're just making sure that we don't need to take that step. We'll work on a communication plan for the newly affected properties that will have to start collecting and paying the fee. And then we're coordinating also with the Visitor Convention Bureau because they're very concerned that this revenue stream will stop, but it's not going to.
They're currently our TPA manager.
So that was a whole lot of information. I just needed to let you know before I signed the temporary agreement with Department of Revenue.
And how might that affect a future move we might make about heads in beds at Airbnbs? Does it affect that at all?
No, it does not. We already collect the LTAC, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. That fee is collected on Airbnbs by the state of Washington.
Does it affect anything having to do with tribal facilities?
No, it does not. We don't have any control over tribal jurisdictions.
And even, I know the county went through some time back, down in Grand Mound.
That was about property taxes.
Right, so does that same ruling apply maybe to these other
Yeah.
properties that are being developed and some are
The
and some
state,
are not?
the state and the county cannot impose taxes on tribal properties.
And the reason I'm going there is because there's been new agreements
Quaaludes.
where, how's the best way to put this? In the new taxing district, and I wanna say out by Hawks Prairie,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be collecting, tribe is, but they're gonna be remitting to the county and the city that portion that they would normally get anyway. And the state is not gonna get their portion that they would get. There's some compact that's taken place on all these tribal activities to help local government continue to provide services, but the state is kind of cut out of the piece, if you will.
So I have not seen a new compact with the Nisqually tribe in the county. There is apparently an agreement that the tribe we reached with the city of Lacey regarding services that would be provided because that property, I believe, is within Lacey city limits. The tribal compact between the state and local jurisdictions is regarding revenues on gambling. And there are sharing agreements that the county has had for quite some time with each of our tribes, including Nisqually, where they pay, it's like 2% of the profits off the gambling revenues that the tribe collects.
And that's kind of a voluntary basis of.
It's not voluntary, it's
contributing or-
required by the compact with the state of
Okay.
Washington to allow them to conduct gambling on tribal land.
Okay, thank you. Just wondering if it.
Yep, but this agreement has no
Okay.
impact on that.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster?
All right, so that's the TPA.
Okay.
More to come on that.
And then potential changes to advisory boards.
So a couple, I'll invite Ashley and Jeremy up for one of them. The very quick one is I attended the VAB, the Veterans Advisory Board meeting last week, and they do have a desire to change their membership number from 9 to 15 so that they could get more involvement of veterans in that work. And so that will require a change to code, so I just wanted to alert the board that we'll start that process going. It does not have any bearing on the trigger in terms of the size of the Board of County Commissioners because none of the seats are tied to that. But it is something that will get going, hopefully with the board support, move that forward as they continue to figure out how they can become more and more vibrant as a group. The other one that we wanted to touch base with the board on this morning was specifically related to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Board. As you know, we've been going through this journey of looking at all the various boards and commissions that may have some nexus with the number of county commissioners, and then doing a review and sort of taking a time to not only look at the structure, but also the purpose and why was it formed? Does it continue to serve that purpose? Are there other ways of conducting that business to make sure that we have that? And this is one of those groups that I think that since it came on board, life has evolved. We now have a NPV, National Pollution Discharge Elimination permit, which really kind of changes how we do outreach, how do we engage the community. And so I'll turn it over to Jeremy and Ashley.
Sure. Do you want me to lead off on this one? So the SWAB, as we call it for short, was originally created back in 1990 for the specific purpose of providing public outreach and an accountability on our utility rates. That was its primary purpose. Since then, the SWAB has evolved, and also the county's programs have evolved. Specifically in 2007, with us obtaining our municipal stormwater permit, which Assistant County Manager Gelder referenced earlier, we provide additional public outreach efforts. Our staff does. Some of those items, including hosting stormwater utility and stream team events. We issue the annual stormwater utility rate newsletter. That's the splash newsletter all ratepayers in the boundary get. We work with other jurisdictions, Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, on stream team efforts, and that's, of course, reducing our impacts on our Thurston County streams and the species that live in those streams. We also organize other educational workshops and trainings, and we maintain ongoing public communications with our educational and outreach specialists that are housed in CPED. CPED went through and worked with the Public Works Department and took a look at SWAB and all of these public efforts that we do. We do feel we actually address the requirements of the municipal stormwater permit with the other efforts, other outreach efforts other than SWAB. So we think we satisfy our permit requirements with it without having SWAB in place. Just as one point. And then I do want to mention the current membership, and I know we're pressed on time on this one. Just as further background, the SWAB itself, it's comprised of 9 members. 6 of those are apportioned by commissioners' districts. You have 2 who need to reside in each commissioner district within the municipal stormwater rate boundary itself. And then 3 can be at-large appointments from within that ratepayer boundary. All of these members have to be residents of the boundary, not necessarily ratepayers, or not necessarily, it's not necessarily representative of all ratepayers. The ones that aren't necessarily represented on the SWAB are businesses that also pay rates into our stormwater utility. SWAB members themselves currently serve 3-year terms. They are required to represent that balance of perspective from residents, again, within the utility rate boundary, as well as a balance between urban and rural interests. And of course, appointments to the SWAB have been difficult to fill over time. So should the board decide to keep SWAB, we're of course not going to recommend that we go through the same process we did with the Planning Commission. But our recommended proposed change right now is actually to possibly disband the SWAB because it really has already served its purpose, and we're satisfying the requirements of municipal stormwater permit already with our other outreach efforts, including with our utility rate accountability. But that's our basic bottom line recommendation after our evaluation. Anything to add, Ashley?
No, other than freeing up some of the resources, like we spend hundreds of hours supporting SWAB, both with our stormwater program manager as well as all the staff that attend the meetings. Freeing up those resources would allow us to reach a broader and more diverse audience and get more direct feedback on the items that the SWAB is currently providing feedback on, and we have those technological tools to put that in place. But it is sort of a matter of resource allocation at this point.
And that would also free up administrative staff time that also spends a considerable amount of time supporting SWAB that could be reallocated to supporting those other efforts.
Questions, Commissioner
How do
Evans?
the current SWAB members feel about this proposal, or are they even aware of it?
We wanted to check in with the board before we went to SWAB. We are scheduled to have a discussion with them at their next meeting. They only meet every other month, and so at the last meeting, this wasn't really even something that we were ready to chat with them about. But we've definitely set aside that time based on the board's feedback.
I guess from my perspective, because I mean, I see no reason not to move ahead as proposed, but I would like to hear from the SWAB members to see how they feel this all fits and if we're gonna miss something. So,
Thank you. Any additional questions?
no more questions for me. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster?
What's the timing of this?
We would probably look to bring an amendment, actually a change to the resolution by the end of the year. The SWAB was initially formed by resolution, so this doesn't require a code amendment and therefore doesn't really require a public hearing to pass another resolution disbanding it. So,
And SWAB is the one that kind of created that report with certain statistical metrics on how we're doing with, I remember catchments that we've cleaned and I don't know, they set goals. And am I remembering the right committee report?
Yes, that is something that they've worked on with our staff in Public Works. And
You're saying that's above and beyond what they.
It is above and beyond what's required in the municipal stormwater permit, and I think the interest is really trying to hear from a broader and diverse audience, like our overburdened and underrepresented communities. We also have a number of members of SWAB that serve on other advisory boards. And so if we did want to do something ad hoc, we could essentially ask for representation from a lot of the other existing groups that have an interest in water resources.
yeah, and disbanding SWAB does not stop the county from forming a specific stakeholder group in the future to address a specific countywide issue. We've done that in the past for specific planning issues, for instance, mineral lands, the HCP and others.
What did you say the original purpose was? You said something about utility rates?
The original purposes, the two, were providing public involvement and accountability on utility rate expenditures.
Yeah, it was actually formed out of a committee that was put in place for the stormwater utility, and then it transitioned into an advisory board, and I think it was every 2 or 3 years, a resolution had to be passed to keep extending, and then finally in 2017, it's there in continuity unless the purpose and function is no longer necessary, and I think after looking at their work plans over the last few years, there are probably opportunities for special stakeholder committees, but not necessarily for an advisory board that meets bi-monthly.
I would definitely like to hear from SWAB members too. I mean, I've met with them before, and the experiences that are so technical that they bring, I think it's been very useful for us, because a lot of them have previous engineering and government experience that I was just so surprised at the just breadth of knowledge that was in that group. And so just, if this is direction that we're gonna head, I would like to hear, I'm with Commissioner Edwards on that, on this, not that the proposal is not good, but just would like to hear from them and see if, because I would not like to lose that experience either, right? And because it is a lot of knowledge that is, that this advisory committee has, or advisory board has.
Yeah, I think it's because of the change in the number of county commissioners, the way outreach has evolved over time, and it doesn't preclude our ability to tap into that expertise, but as opposed to sort of trying to keep something that is maybe an older construct for how we do that community outreach, there's other opportunities that we have.
Does Kitsap have a SWAB?
No, it was disbanded several years ago because of the change in the landscape and how outreach was done.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so it is noon, and we'll
Can I get one comment
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna run out the door. Reference Kitsap, I just make mention, I happened to attend the county's meeting on budgets yesterday. And Kitsap is getting body cameras for free, kind of thing, or a grant.
Got a grant.
Yeah, and so I didn't know if they knew what we know yet. You might just want to mention that to them. I don't know if you stay in touch with those people. But one of the main things that came out of that meeting was sweeping of ARPA funds into the general fund. are we doing that same thing on the interest into the?
Oh, the interest from ARPA is one of the things that the board committed to using to do the voter center for the auditor.
Okay, but I mean, we are doing the sweeping, at least we're not
We know
losing it.
exactly, we're not losing it, we
Okay.
know exactly how much it is, and you have signed it for a specific purpose. Otherwise, we could have swept it into the general fund.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, we're using it for
We
general
are
fund
using
type
it.
activity.
Yes, we
That's-
are.
That was my only question,
Yep,
so.
totally
Anyway.
knew that,
Sounds like other counties are in the same situation we find ourselves in.
yes.
Okay.
If I may, before
Oh.
Commissioner Edwards leaves, you may be aware, I'm going to hand you this, sir, that
Pass it on.
Romero had been, you keep them together, you get both copies.
Oh, okay,
Two and two.
okay.
This is the draft of the meeting ordinance that Romero had been working on with, I don't know why you got an extra.
No, this one's yours.
With Elizabeth. This is because state laws have changed.
I guess
You
that's it.
have, yep, you have a clean version and a red line version, so you can see what the changes are. And I'm asking you to take a look at this on November 21st. On your agenda, there will be a request to set a public hearing because your meetings are set in an ordinance, and then adopt it after the public hearing on December 12th. And again, this is something that Romero had been working with Elizabeth on. She says that if we don't pass it by the end of the year, we can still work on it after the first of the year, but we need to ensure that that we're following state law in what we do, even if we don't change our ordinance. So it's all about in compliance with state law.
So this changes are just to be in compliance with state law?
That's correct. And the changes are mainly about meetings with other jurisdictions when you're not in this room.
Okay.
So that was,
I guess
that
if
was
there's
that.
anything
Take a
else I
look, there'll be more to
miss
come.
out on, I'll watch the.
Yep,
No,
that's all I
we'll
have.
go ahead, it is 12:04, thank you. We'll go ahead and adjourn.